Welcome. You are listening and watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Today, well, we're talking, it's the 29th, but you'll be seeing this early morning on the 30th. We'll make sure we get it out early. John Rubino is here. Man, John, it's great to have you on. As always, send us your emails. We're seeing a breakout in mining stocks right now, which usually presages a breakout in actual metal prices. The stocks go first and then the metals. So we want to know your opinion. Are you invested in mining stocks? How do you feel about the future? Email us kl@kerrylutz.com, kl@kerrylutz.com. So John, good morning and happy Monday. And man, these mining stocks are on fire.
Kerry, yeah, that's the story of the day. But first of all, I know I need a haircut. You guys don't have to tell me that in the comments, okay? The place that's been cutting my hair is closed since February.
We're going to censor those comments, John. Don't worry about it. We don't let them abuse the guest's appearance, make ad hominem attacks, and hairdressing commentary. That's strictly forbidden. So don't even bother, because we're just going to delete your comments.
Okay, so yeah, you go ahead and make fun of my ideas all you want to, but when you make fun of my hair, it makes me feel bad. So anyhow, mining stocks, yeah.
Oh man, they're on fire. Like
they're rocking. Yeah, there are a lot
resources.
of little. Yeah, Oren is what? It's doubled in just
our sponsor.
Lately.
Yeah. Well, it went down to like below $1 when we had the crash, and on March 23rd, and now it's getting close to $2.
And they've got a lot going on. They've got some very big properties that they promise this year to drill out. In other words, to tell us what's there. And what they're saying is that it's probably a lot. So they're going to find a lot of gold this year, according to what they say. And the stock is responding to that possibility. So this could be a 10-bagger from here, or we might have to wait. You don't know for sure, but it's encouraging to see this happen. But now we're into kind of a scary stretch with mining stocks, because these are really volatile, especially the little ones, Kerry, that you and I like. They're really volatile, which means they can spike and then they can round trip you in a heartbeat. And Rick Rule, in an interview over the weekend, said that we should expect that in the near term. In other words, there are always corrections in a bull market. The junior miners are super volatile, so they will correct harder than anything else. And don't let it shake you out. And I'm not sure what to do with that, because if a correction is coming, I would like to lighten up a little bit and take some money off the table.
Take some money off and then buy back cheaper. And in the interest of full disclosure, we work with Oren Resources and I own shares in it. I just think that's like the quintessential sleepy potential miner that has so many, it has 3 or 4 tier 1 potential resources there, that if one of them hits, that stock could go tenfold. John, I respect Rick Rule a lot, but didn't we already have our correction? I mean, the thing it lost like 60% of its value. All of our sponsor companies got killed, absolutely decimated, and they've all come roaring back, getting close to 52-week highs. So look, if you've doubled on the stock, then you could think about selling half of it. But if you haven't had a double yet, I mean, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying, where are you in that position? And look, these pullbacks happen, but the way the market is now and the relative strength, John, of gold and silver, make me believe that any pullback is going to be very short-lived.
Well, this is the tricky part of any bull market. And I agree with you about the precious metals miners and precious metals in general. They've got a long way to run. But when you have a lot of stuff that's up, it's intellectually that you need to sell some. Like you said, take half off the table and then play with house money from there on. But it's emotionally really hard to do, because what if they do this again, the next week, and you're out of it. It's really tough to get off the train, but you should do it, and I know that, but that's what I'm wrestling with right now. How much should I sell?
Well, the formulas. So for instance, if the stock has tripled, sell a third. If it's quadrupled, sell a quarter. So you're still holding the majority of your position, and you've got your money off the table. And then, if you've liquidated a third of your portfolio, say for argument's sake, if the crash does come, then you're going to have the opportunity to buy a lot of things cheap. I shouldn't call it a crash, but a retracement, a pullback, a Fibonacci 1/3 retracement, right?
Yeah. Well, with junior miners, it feels like a crash because they're so volatile. You can lose 50% in these things in a morning before you've even looked to see what the price is. It could be down by half the way these things trade. So yeah,
I know.
But what I'm saying is that you should definitely have a plan, but plans are hard to implement in the moment when stuff is just going up like crazy. Like Mike Tyson's old saying, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And in the junior mining sector, the analog is everybody has a plan until your stock doubles.
Yeah. But then have the plan pre-done before, and put in some stink bids, some sell what do you call them? Sell stops. Right? So if the stock you paid $1 for it and it gets to 3, put in a sell stop in advance, a stink bid for a third of your position.
Yeah.
And then it takes the emotion out and you don't have to think about it. But look, Bernard Baruch said, you never go broke taking a profit on Wall Street. And because of the volatility of these stocks, it's not unusual to see a stock trading at its 52-week high and it's double or triple its 52-week low, and that happens every year. So take the profits while you have them, at least some of them, at least play on the house's money. That is the only way, John, I have ever made money in the stock market. Waiting for the thing to go to infinity was like waiting for Bitcoin to hit 100,000 when it was at 19,000. And then watching it go to 3,000. It's no different. And you will invariably suffer the same fate, especially because the stocks are volatile. And when they go up really fast, then they're making a parabolic move. They can come down really fast, which is why you take money off the table and don't worry about FOMO, fear of missing out, all that good stuff. Hey, but would you rather be wondering, can I go to the gym, or should I take some profits on stocks? Or you're in China and your house is right below the Three Gorges Dam, and now more and more people are saying this thing is going to collapse. And the flooding in China, first they said that the Three Gorges Dam, largest electrical generation station in the world, was good for a 10,000-year storm. Then they said 1,000-year storm. Then they said 100. And then they said, if it really floods badly, you're on your own. 22,500 megawatts of electrical generation that could conceivably black out a third of China, and 400 million people below the dam. Not all would die, obviously, but they are at risk. And it's, when you look back at how it was built, one company was responsible for the planning, the actual engineering, the construction, and quality control. And evidently they used concrete the consistency of oatmeal. They didn't use enough rebar, and they didn't let the dam cure or dry for a long enough period of time before they filled the lake, the artificial lake, the reservoir behind it. And John, this could be the mother of all black swans. I don't want to be an alarmist on it. I don't know for sure, but there are pictures from Google Earth that appear to show that the dam, due to earthquake, seismic activity, and pressure of the reservoir, the water behind it, has actually shifted and is no longer a straight line, but it's kind of, you have to look at it. The Chinese say, oh no, it's a problem with Google Earth, not our dam. Our dam wouldn't do that. And that makes me suspicious, because when they're calling into question the integrity of the dam, you got to do a little more than say, oh no, not our problem. Google Universe, Google Satellites messed it up.
Well, this is one of those when it rains, it pours kinds of things, actually on two levels, because it's literally raining. But
okay, you accidentally said that,
I know. but you know, when the way life works is when you have a problem, other problems seem to come at the same time, just because that's how the universe likes to mess with you. And the world is in that kind of a situation right now. We've got a lot of problems, and so it shouldn't be any surprise that more are coming. You know, there are several more big black swans out there on a landing trajectory that could really complicate things. Because you know, here in the U.S., of course, we've got a pandemic, a big recession, and a political campaign, you know, a presidential campaign that we don't know what to do with here, among other things. And China has, you know, if anything, you know, a worse pandemic situation, because it started more or less there. And they're in more danger in a recession than we are politically, because you know, it's a dictatorship. They're not a legitimate government, which means the civil unrest that we've seen lately could be dwarfed by what happens in China if they can't continue to provide really good jobs for hundreds of millions of people. So now, flooding, you know, big flooding. And that's historically normal for China. They have big floods. But I'm not sure they've seen anything like the Three Gorges Dam breaking. You know, that would be a whole different thing. So hopefully it doesn't happen, because, you know, that means potentially millions of people drown. So, you know, no schadenfreude here. Let's hope this doesn't happen to them, because that's just a nightmare, and it makes everybody else's situation harder. So, and you know, the other things that are happening now is that the Middle East is on the verge of war again. And who are the other guys? Not Israel and Iran, which they are doing a lot of things with each other, but it's Turkey and Egypt. That are kind of on the verge of war now. That's not, as far as I know, has never happened before. And who knows what that means, because Turkey is still a member of NATO. And Egypt is more or less an ally of the United States.
A client state. It's a client state.
So what does that mean if they start shooting at each other? You know, who knows? There's a lot of complexity.
And India and China, they've been killing each other, but they haven't been shooting each other. They've been, because they have some kind of treaty that says they can't fire guns at each other. So they've been like hand-to-hand combat, bludgeoning each other to death.
Sticks and rocks.
Yeah, you know, it's like, hey, which is kind of refreshing when you think about it.
Well,
modern warfare is so impersonal, and you push a button in a room in Tampa, Florida, and 500 people die in Pakistan. It's just not a good thing. So
yeah, I'm sure the sticks and rocks thing is a lot more visually compelling. The YouTube videos must be better. But you know, this kind of takes us back to the overall stock market, because that's a big part of the junior miners story too, is that the overall stock market in the US is in some danger here, because there's this repeating pattern where the Fed's balance sheet, when it grows, the stock market goes up. When it plateaus and starts to drift down, stocks tank, and they force the Fed to get back in there and start doing more QE. And the Fed's balance sheet is starting to contract right now. So it's
not
possible.
For long. Yeah, not for long.
Well, and stocks are way up today. They're not far from record levels. So you got a very vulnerable stock market at a time when money is being pulled out of the system by the Fed shrinking its balance sheet. And historically, this has caused, or at least coincided with, a big drop in stock prices. So that's another thing we're looking at here, where we might see another big crack in the market, on top of all the other stuff we've got going on. So this is a complicated time, you know, and
to say the least. And you know, if the dam bursts, it's just the destruction, knocking out 40% of China's GDP. All these things, not to mention a third of their electrical. You know, you can't just replace 22,500 megawatts of daily generation. It will lead to a global depression, like way worse than what we were thinking we were going to get, because 40% of the second largest economy's GDP just goes down the drain instantly. I don't know that it's going to happen, but I do know there are issues with that dam. it was, like I said, wasn't allowed to cure long enough. It was rushed into production. And there was a group of Western engineers that reviewed part of it when they were building it, part of the structure, and said, you guys, you're using like watery concrete, you don't have enough rebar, and you're not letting it cure long enough. And they said, oh, you're just anti-Chinese, and sent them on their way. And rather than like, oh, maybe we better do something here, what they should have done, and the flooding is worse than ever. So it's failed at its primary task, that dam, which was to help alleviate and manage flooding in the Yangtze River. I think that was the Yellow River they used to call it. And it's thousands of years that river has been flooding, and now they've screwed it up. What they should have done, evidently, and I'm not a hydrologist, I don't know about these things, but what I've read is multiple smaller dams up and down the river. They would have gotten the electricity and would have been easier to manage. But I think at some point you get so much rain, nothing can manage it. And I think that's where they're at now. They're in their rainy season. Prophecies, predictions. Some guy had 14 prophecies for June and July, 7 of which have already come true. One of which is that it's going to collapse in July. And you just can't even imagine. This would be the greatest man-made / natural catastrophe probably in history, John.
Well, let's hope not, but who knows? I'm obviously not an engineer, so
it makes two of us.
Idea, yeah. Just hopefully they figure out a way to keep that from happening, because that's a lot of dead people, and then global turmoil if it happens. So,
and the end of communism as we know it. There's no way that government could ever survive that big a boondoggle. They couldn't.
They got a big army. It could just be more of a police state.
They'd lose more of the army, and the army is made up of the people. And I think it's the end of communism should it occur. Not that that's a worthy, not a worthy goal in and of itself. It is, but not at this kind of stupendous cost. You're talking trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in damage, like that. There is no insurance policy in the world can cover it.
Well, and historically, revolutions are not smooth things. It's not like the communists get overthrown and we have some kind of libertarian government model on Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah, Ron
rising there.
Ron
Something
Paul.
Could be worse. Yeah.
China's Ron Paul.
They won't call Ron Paul and appoint him emperor. So it could easily be something worse than what is there now. You don't know. And in this world, there are so many unknowns already that another big unknown would just be too much. I mean, from the point of view of a gold bug and a stock market bear, stuff like this is okay because you make a lot of money from it. But there are different ways to make money in crisis investing. And what you really want is just a monetary crisis, something that can be fixed financially. And okay, gold goes way up, but then you change some of the rules and you do change the monetary system and life goes back to semi-normal. But there are other kinds of crises where you don't get back to normal for a long time if you even survive the crisis. And hopefully we don't have those. But I'll tell you what, we're not that far from civil war in the U.S. And there are other places where they're a lot closer. So I don't know. Actually, this might be a good time to segue into political hypocrisy in the U.S. if you want to.
Yeah, I just want to make just one comment. That picture behind me is the floodgates from the Three Gorges Dam, and they were improperly designed so that they actually accelerate flooding beneath, downstream from the dam, rather than alleviating it. Made the flooding 5 times faster than it used to be because they're improperly designed. Anyways, so let's get on to the political COVID hypocrisy. And where is that taking us?
Well, this has been going on for quite a while. And it's always been the Democrats lately. I don't want to, cut the Republicans too much slack when it comes to political hypocrisy.
Do not.
They're as bad. They're human beings and they're just as manipulative.
Totally corrupt.
Yeah. But lately it's been the Democrats, because go back to the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, right? When when, he gets accused of sexual assault, and all the Democrats are like, oh yeah, of course, you have to believe these women never lie. You have to believe, and he's clearly guilty just because the people are saying it. And so that goes away. And then Biden gets accused of basically the same thing, something very similar to what Kavanaugh got accused of. And it was as an adult instead of a high school student. But all these same Democrats were out there saying, oh, well, we need to have due process. And, there seem to be so many holes in her. Right. It was just, they destroyed their credibility on that subject at that time. And now the coronavirus comes along, and some white guys in Michigan decide they want to protest the lockdown because they want to go back to work. And everybody's like, oh, that's so dangerous. Look, they're not wearing masks. They're not socially distancing. If we send them back to work now, everybody will get sick. And so those protests end. But then the BLM and, the most recent civil unrest happens, and everybody is silent, or at least everybody on the Democrat side is silent about these massive crowds in the street because, the issue is so much more important than the virus. And okay, they get away with that. And then Trump announces he wants to have a rally. And the same guys who were cutting the rioters a lot of slack say, oh no, that's so irresponsible. You're going to cause a spike in COVID. It's just so funny to watch these guys just go back and forth and not remember what they said a week ago on the same subject. So, who knows what comes next, but the hypocrisy of right now, it's the Democrats, is just so astounding that who would believe anything they say from now on? Because it's clearly, how lawyers, when they have to speak for their clients, no matter whether it's the truth or not. And then when the client's interests change, they, at least on the lawyer shows I've watched on TV, that's how they do it. They say completely different things. And the politicians right now, at least in the Democrat Party, are doing the same thing, and they're doing it publicly with a paper trail, and within weeks of the last thing that they said that they're now contradicting. It's just amazing to watch. And on the same subject, did you see the lawyers? I think it was in St. Louis, where husband and wife, very well-to-do lawyers, have this mansion in a gated community, and protesters break through the gate and they're marching down the street. And these two lawyers go out in their front yard with guns and stand there to scare away the protesters. And they're being doxxed. Everybody is finding out their information and trying to destroy their lives because these guys protected their property. But what they're doing is actually pretty cool. They're standing out there defending their house.
Hell yeah.
So,
those people are just lucky they didn't get killed. Because,
the guy looked like he had an assault weapon. It looked like it might be semi-automatic, at least, and maybe automatic. So you need to be careful when you cross somebody like that.
If they come here in Florida, guns are like religion here in Florida. Shooting ranges all over the place, a lot like where you were in Idaho, a lot like Arizona and Texas. And that's one of the reasons you just haven't seen this kind of thing happen in these southern states.
Well, see, because that's really the next stage of this is when shooting starts. And we, again, hope it doesn't happen. But for instance, in Michigan, if they had sent the police in to clear out the protesters who brought guns to the state house and people got killed, that could have blown up into something where it was, Tea Party people in the streets instead of BLM. It could have easily been civil unrest coming from the right, not the left. And now, if there is a situation where people start shooting at each other and it kind of mushrooms to where you got the cops in there and the cops don't know what side to be on. And so we're not out of the woods here yet, and it could get a lot worse. Oh, and don't forget Chainsaw Guy. Do you remember that video of the guy in, I think it was California?
Did he get arrested?
That was hilarious. Did he get arrested? I was going to say, I don't know.
Arrested.
Yeah, I don't know what he was saying while he was doing that stuff, and I don't know what happened to him afterwards, but the video is just hilarious. Protesters are kind of swarming over there, and he shows up with a chainsaw that's turned on, and everybody's
Hey, well, look what's happening in Chop or Chaz. That experiment in anarchic rule didn't turn out very well. Evidently, they're reclaiming it as part of Greater Seattle. I mean, if Trump like picked the master strategy, like, hey, these guys are going to implode. Let me just sit back with the popcorn and wait for it to hit the fan. They've had 5 shootings there. Somebody was saying, we need a white person here, with a gun, basically a white cop to like restore order. I mean,
well, see, that was the thing. They were going to let them be, kind of like Occupy Wall Street, until the shooting started. And once shooting starts, you even if you don't want to go in there, if you're the mayor of Seattle and you don't want to be on the other side of that argument, they have to go in.
Not want to.
No. And now the small businesses that were hurt by this thing are suing the city. So this isn't over either. There's a lot of hilarious stuff that's going to come from the after effects of this stuff. So, man, Kerry, it's so much easier just to say, we're going to have inflation and gold's going to go up and let's keep stacking it. Those were simpler times. Remember those times we could talk
about? The good
about
old days.
Golden inflation.
10% inflation.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. And now there's stuff that has funny sides to it, but just isn't funny, And let me see, I have one more thing. Let me see if there's another thing on my list.
Sure.
No, I guess not. Okay. That was all the stuff that I prepared, but there's more.
We could go on. Honestly, we could go on for 2 hours with what's happening in New York City. They've just about had it with de Blasio. I mean, we might see a Ceausescu moment with Comrade Bill, because the city is completely dying before your very eyes. People are fleeing like you can't believe. I mean, my daughter, son-in-law, they've left Manhattan, went to Connecticut. People are just getting out of Dodge. And I think all of these cities, and one other thing, Trump said, well, all of the cities with the worst crime, out of control crime, are run by Democrats. So the Washington Post was going to debunk this theory of the president's, because of course it couldn't be true. And what did they find? Of the top crime-ridden cities in America, only one of them had a Republican mayor, and that was the mayor of Jacksonville, Florida, and he just took over last year. So you can't exactly saddle him with all the crime and everything. And now it's like, oh yeah, well, gee, I wonder if there's a correlation there. Look, we both agree, John, that both parties are equally as corrupt. But if you want them to be as corrupt as they possibly can to reach constantly new and ever higher levels of corruption, give them one-party rule, and they will be more corrupt. Somehow, when there's 2 parties contesting power, you seem to wind up with less corruption because it's a check. Not saying you wind up with corruption free, but you wind up with perhaps less corruption, unless, of course, both parties make a deal and then they just continue to loot the state or the city. But it's an interesting phenomena, but we can pick up on that later. We want to hear your questions, your comments. We answer all of them on YouTube that we can possibly get to. A lot of times there's just too many, but if you email me, we definitely will get back to you. Please email me, kl@kerrylutz.com. Make sure you go to John's website, dollarcollapse.com. Sign up for his newsletter that's free weekly. Sign up for ours at Financial Survival Network. John, we'll catch you next week.
Thanks, Kerry. See ya.